My vocal chain.
Vocal chain, go for it.
Let's do it. Let's just go in on it. Okay, so the first thing I do is I put a filter on the vocal. Oh my God, I love this. This is gonna be the worst and best episode we've ever done.
Yeah, the people wanted it. Here we go.
I know.
And we'll talk through it one at a time, because I'm sure I'll be like, okay, why do you do that? And by the way, I do that too. So you're lopping off low end, I assume you're filtering?
Yeah, and high end. Up to 100 usually, sometimes 120 depending, and then down to maybe 20K, 25K, or just some sort of high cut as well.
The low one makes sense to me because booms and people knocking the mic. And
plosives, P's and B's. Yeah.
There's nothing in a vocal track that's going below 100 cycles, even the lowest singer. It's extremely unlikely. Maybe there's some energy there sometimes for some vocals, but not really useful.
It's just you're competing, with other stuff that doesn't need to be there.
Why the high end filter?
Focus.
Okay.
There's nothing above that you need either, right? So it's the same concept. Other things exist up there, dog frequencies. There's no need for that. You can't hear it. It presents the vocal in a more focused position when doing that. But we didn't get through the chain. So these questions all tally up to something. You can't just. It's absolutely. Not one thing doesn't do the thing, right? So we'll start there. Then I put my DW Fern VT7 on it, or the Unfair Child. So then it goes to an analog situation. Maybe a de-esser before, maybe after, depending on how well it was recorded. So that's not always.
Let's go one at a time here. So both the VT Fern piece of gear and the Unfair Child are outboard
analog tube limiters.
So they have some limiting compression. I know you've talked about it before. You don't do
there's no ratio.
You're not doing a ton of gain reduction with them. It's more for the harmonics, and maybe it evens out a little bit because, again, harmonic saturation has a compressing effect to it.
If someone says, I've heard Serban goes to 16, similar concept. Yes.
Filtering.
Filtering. You can go to anything that the vocal or the song needs, right? I'm sure he goes to 18. He might go to 14. He might even go to 10. And I might even go to 12. The concept is that's how you focus the record. Like Kendrick Lamar doesn't have anything above 14K in his vocal. Like that's that's a good example to listen to versus a pop record that we're talking about. Serban, it's way more distinct and obvious on a Kendrick Lamar vocal. It's way more bandpassed. He is the only thing in this mid-range space, and that's filtering. That's also potentially the mic that it's recorded on and where his nasal tone is a lot of the time, but it's filtered, it's bandpassed. That's the concept. Yeah.
There were two quick things. One, somebody just asked in the chat, and somebody asked when you're filtering, thanks, how many decibels per octave are you doing super hard?
I don't even care.
Yeah, don't know. Based on the sound, maybe it's
12, 24 on the top. It could be 6. I don't know the answer to that. Yeah.
One of the things about filtering is it's not just eliminating frequencies, but it creates both the appearance of, and because of a phase shift, it actually changes the audible signal as well.
Yes, and we'll get there. We'll get there. We're not done.
Just important to people to know that it's not just about taking off frequencies. There's phase things that happen too. But so continue.
Yeah. So then,
and it depends on slope too. Things get more and less dramatic based on the cue and the slope.
Exactly. So that's a later thing, right?
So de-esser is a plugin, I assume. I assume.
The Weiss de-esser. I'll use that pre or post the analog gear depending on the quality of source material. If it's not very SE, then there's no need to do it until I'm, doing my analog warmth to it. There's no need to do more before that. I try to do the least possible. So when we get through this chain, we're almost done. Like what I'm talking about now, we're probably about halfway through, and we've talked about 3 things.
I love it.
So the de-esser will be pre or post, but a lot of times it's clip gain. So into this step now, after the filter, is where we've talked about this many, many times. This is where I clip gain. This is where I'll adjust S's, consonants.
So you will print back into the computer and then clip gain the resulting thing.
No. Into the analog gear.
I see.
I want to hit the analog gear even and already dynamically controlled. So it hits the tubes as even as, you know, I can possibly get it on first attempt.
Yeah.
You know, and then of course, yes, afterwards there's broad stroke clip gaining after that, but it's more nitpicky clip gain into it. If something is really dynamic where I can do a quick cheat, the one thing I'll throw in there before that, and this is not always, we're talking about the always, this is not an always, the Faraday limiter, I will do a bit of a hard clamp on before the gear if something is way too raw and dynamic. If it's like mic technique issues where it's just like it's just so out of whack, I'll handicap myself and I'll give myself a handicap.
So you haven't clip gained yet. You'll put these things on as a general thing, and then you'll go back and clip gain into them.
Into all of them.
Interesting.
Yes.
Interesting.
Depending on how dramatically dynamic these things are, and that's usually a bad vocal producer. It is just very rare. You know, the people I'm working with, that's usually taken care of at this point. Yeah, very rare. That's why I'm like, that's a little more of an anecdote. Like sometimes I have to do this.
And one thing I want to say really quick is it sounds like we're already into, this is a framework, but there's lots of different ways you might adjust, and you might do clip gain and then go back, and people need to understand that, again, because a lot of people, it's why we hate answering these questions, is because it's like, this isn't the way to make something sound good. Yes. This is a way that you've built a framework over years, and you keep adjusting.
That's why this episode is called The Worst Questions. What does Jon do on his vocal chain? It's like,
all right, so sorry, keep going. Keep going.
So after that, well, it could be done. That could be it. I would say I would do a transient shaper after that.
What does that achieve on a vocal?
More transients after any limiting, any loss of through saturation, you know, any loss of transients through whether it's the tubes or the Faraday.
We're talking about clarity of words and sibilance and rhythm
all that
and
stuff that people like about the fake transient of the all buttons in 1176. When you hear a vocal that does that, the transients are gone. They're not actually there. That's this pushed, compressed energy that people think is transients. It's actually lack of transients. So if I'm trying to emulate something of the sort, I'll use that to do like really aggressive transients. I would also say that's on every vocal is the spectral shaper in the upper mid range. So I'm not doing too much EQ reduction and more spectral shaping and control, kind of like what people use Soothe for. We've talked about this in previous episodes. I use the spectral shaper. I think it has less phasing issues. It's less
spectral shaper is what plugin?
Ozone
spectral shaper.
So I think I could just, it's less mysterious to me. Soothe is mysterious. Nobody actually knows what it's doing. And if you can tell me, like, please give me a nice like white paper on what Soothe is actually doing, and I'll be very impressed with you. I use the spectral shaper because it's less mysterious. I can hear what it's doing. I could hear what the tone control and the character is doing. It's very clear to me when it's too far. You know, with Soothe, I think you go too far, you don't realize you go too far, and then you have to keep checking yourself. So that's my way of controlling upper mid range. If it's a bad recording, then there's some dramatic subtractive EQ before the tubes, like on the same Pro Q3 that I'll do the filtering that I started this question with. Then I'll do some reductive, subtractive EQs before the gear if there's problems. Again, I'm not really dealing with too many problematically recorded vocals often. I'm lucky. I have, and every once in a while it's like, whoa, this is crazy, and like so much 4K.
Oh, I just lost you. Can you hear me?
20 minutes away. If that's probably the call for that.
Oh,
thank you.
We're back. Got you.
Back. I had a call.
You must have got
a call. So there will be reductive EQ in that area as well. Then I'm going to flip everyone here and just say, now that I've done these kind of more broad stroke moves, sometimes something really wants a really compressed sounding vocal every once in a while. So I've talked about this. I wrote a poem about it. I'll use the Ozone dynamics in Ozone 9 before the transient shaper sometimes to give a little bit of that extra clamped energy, depending on the genre, depending on the goal, depending on what I think someone else wants. It's less about what I want in that case, and it's more what I'm pretty sure they're gonna miss, you know, from the rough, or I'm just trying to find my own way to give that energy without like a sound of a compressor. Again, we've talked about compression for episodes on episodes. I'm not looking for the sound of compression. I'm looking for the functionality of it and the energy if it needs it, and getting the sound from other things.